Scripture this morning is coming from the book of James, the epistle. James chapter 4. I'm reading out of the New King James Version from James chapter 4. There's a part of me that wants to go through this entire chapter, but I want to highlight a specific verse in James 4, and that would be verse 6. But he gives more grace. Therefore, he says, God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. I'd like to use as a sermonic thought and topic, by bad behavior. Sermon in a sentence is this, just in case you didn't guard your Saturday night and you will find yourselves in a moment sleeping. I pray not, but if so, at least you'll know what we attempted to address on this morning. Attitudes affect actions, and they both need to be good to please God. I always think it's hilarious when the person who asked me to use a specific illustration is not present. And I'm not even going to call June's name, but here we go. Okay. Here we go. Focus. Speed. I am speed. One winner, 42 losers. I eat losers for breakfast. Breakfast? Maybe I should have had breakfast. Breakfast would be good for me. No. Focus. Speed. Faster than last, quicker than quick. I am lightning. Ka-chow! I'm with that. I'm not even mad at you. Not even mad at you. I don't know if I've said this in quite some time, but Cars is one of my favorite movies. And I'm pretty sure I've used it as an illustration in the past. And one of the things that, if I was putting June out there like she was the one who asked me to use this illustration to explain to her that I don't preach illustrations. I preach God's word and try to use illustrations to explain the truth of God's word. But to the absent June, as exciting and, say it again? Ka-chow! Come on, you gotta say it like with an attitude. You can't just say ka-chow just like, no! We're talking about Lightning McQueen. Try again. Ka-chow! There we go. Just looking at Lightning McQueen and the bright red paint and the stickers and the lightning bolts. Just the very opening scenes when they show Lightning McQueen in the back of Mac. It's exciting, it's electrifying, it's full of energy. And yet, as good as it sounds, Lightning McQueen is filled with some bad behavior. Looking good does not make you good. Speaking well does not make you good. There comes a time when what we say and what we do need to align properly. I don't even have time to get into the Hebrew mindset of understanding that there ought not even be the possibility of speaking opposed to action where we say one thing and do another, but you're saying, I can't even hear it because your actions are speaking so loudly. What we say and what we do, what we say we believe, what we do, all of these things in the book of James ought to come together. And we need to be able to say bye to bad behavior. Okay, let me clarify. I put it on the marquee. B-Y-E, by bad behavior. I'm not talking about B-U-Y, by bad behavior. I'm not trying to get us to act badly. I've seen people that look like they wanted to B-U-Y bad behavior and just act as horribly as they possibly could. Seems like they wanted to act badly. I said in the game last night that somebody, after, I'm not going to call Beck's name, but I'm just saying somebody who was quarterbacking for Georgia, it just seemed like he wanted to throw interceptions. I mean, he may have only had, well, I'm just saying, it just looked like he wanted to throw interceptions. My wife's like, nobody wants to throw interceptions. I'm like, well, he sure looks like he's trying. It seems sometimes as though our behavior, which is bad, we're okay with it. And we just let it be, let it go the way it ought to go. Lightning McQueen just did what he wanted to do, how he wanted to do it, where he wanted to do it. All he was thinking about was what he wanted. So, as we consider saying bye, as in waving goodbye to bad behavior, let's see what kind of mindset we need to have and what stops bad behavior. I continue to try to train our dog, and he's making a lot of progress. I'm so proud of his silence right now in the office. I'm ecstatic that he's saying absolutely nothing and not trying to participate in saying it right now. He has a unique way of doing that. But what stops bad behavior? James 4 and 6. First thing I want to express to you is that God resists greed. But he gives more grace. He therefore says, God resists the proud. That word, proud. Pride is haughtiness. It's showing oneself above others. It is excess esteem. I'm not trying to say you shouldn't have self-esteem. I'm just saying that pride is merit mongering. Like when you just think it's all about you. You're just it. You are it. And everybody ought to recognize that you're it. And nobody can be what you think you are. Romans chapter 1 and verses 20 through 30. The whole first chapter talks about what God gives people over to and our proper perspective in who we are and who he is, and how he'll allow us to think what we want to think, do what we want to do, act like we want to act. But then there's this list in verses 20 through 30 of Romans 1 of things that are bad. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but just understand pride is one of them. And it says the result of that pride is worthy of death. I know in this society, we esteem people that have pride, and it's inappropriate. And yet, we need to understand it from God's perspective. Lightning McQueen, as absolutely gorgeous as he was in his paint job and his stickers and all that he had, He coveted. He wanted that piston cup. He wanted the piston cup all to himself. He was a rookie, and he wanted the piston cup. As a matter of fact, he wanted it so badly, and a part of what he was coveting was not only the piston cup, but the opportunity to trade in that absolutely gorgeous red paint job for Dynaco blue. He just wanted it to be it. He wanted to be the one. He was so ecstatic and appreciative of praise. He went through one accident, had the sun glisten off his lightning bolt, and it flashed on Mia and Tia. Oh, lightning! They were so excited, and he was just soaking it all up because everything seemed to be about him. But God resists greed. We will forever express bad behavior if we're so focused on greed, so focused on self, make everything all about us. We're missing it. If we're not careful, the twin Mazda Miatas that are praising us today, they'll be praising somebody else tomorrow. Understand that greed is not of God. I don't care what it is that you're coveting, what it is that you think you have to have. Greed is not of God. Live for God and for others, not for things. I'm not saying you can't have things. I'm just trying to get us to get a proper perspective. It took a while for him to figure this out. But for Lightning McQueen, the piston cup was empty. And if in life you are chasing your piston cup, brothers and sisters, I'm here to tell you, the piston cup is empty. So if you step on all those who would love you along the way to get to your empty piston cup, you're missing what God has for you. And God resists greed. There was a Porsche in cars. Her name was Sally Carrera. And at first, Lightning McQueen had no clue why a car. And believe me, brothers and sisters, I have a great affinity for Porsches. Always, I don't have time to get into that. I like Porsches. But Lightning McQueen couldn't understand as a race car why a Porsche, designed with so much power, would live in a place like Radiator Springs. But Sally Carrera had figured out what I hope we can figure out. And that is, it's not all about greed. It's not all about what you get. God is so much more important, and you can appreciate all these other things. All right, so what stops bad behavior? God resists greed. What stops bad behavior? Guidance results in gratification. The text says, but he gives even more grace. Therefore, he says, God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. He gives. He is the one true, preeminent God. I know there might be some people that you esteem, but there is no one like God. I know there might be some people that you look up to, but there is no one who can take the place of God. Greek society was very polytheistic. They had a whole bunch of little gods. And so to be able to use the word that was translated into what we're calling God, it means something to say he is preeminent. To say that there's nobody else that could be on his level. And as we go through life, if we allow anyone or anything to get in the way of the one who is preeminent, we're missing the mark. We're missing what's truly important. We don't understand that God is number one. I don't care what sport you play, and I don't care how much you think you've reached the pinnacle, God is number one. God is in charge. God is supreme, and so is his guidance. Lightning McQueen needed some guidance. Matthew 1:23, the text talks about how, behold, a virgin shall be with child. And it goes on to say that he shall be called Emmanuel, which means God with us. God sent his only begotten Son, Jesus the Christ, to be amongst us and to be with us, in part to give us guidance. Because we couldn't get it right, we can't do it right all on our own. And so he came to give us guidance. Bad behavior partly comes from pride, so we need to resist greed, but we also need guidance, and nobody gives it better than God. Lightning McQueen had such a bad, selfish attitude. He kept firing crew chiefs. And when he was being watched and looked at, and the camera crews were on him and they were taking pictures, and his tires are being changed, he got mad at a member of the crew and said, "Move, Chuck, you're in the way of the shot." Oh, who could I ever get to change my tires? His attitude is all about me. The crew left, the crew chiefs left, and he thought he could do it all on his own. It's hilarious in the movie when here comes this opportunity, because there was a three-way tie between three of the greatest racers that there ever were. And he was a part of that three-way tie because he stuck his tongue out at the very end, right there on the line. And he thought he could do it on his own. And he found himself in the back of Mac, and his agent called, Marv, with all this hype, talking about how awesome he was, and said that he's his best friend, they gotta do lunch. And he's like, "Man, I got 20 tickets for you. So that when you guys do this race, you can have 20 of your best friends, come and watch the race." And Lightning McQueen had not one person that he could call a friend to be able to celebrate with him. It's sad when we get to a place in life where, because of our greed, because of our self-centeredness, the only person we can celebrate with is us, because we don't have any friends, we don't have anybody with us, because we haven't listened to anybody who is willing to give us good counsel. We haven't listened to a God who puts people in our lives who can help us be able to do better and to make it. Lightning McQueen was on the verge of being the first rookie ever to win the Piston Cup, and he didn't have not a single friend to be able to share life with. So then when they got ready to announce who was going to be in the race, he runs out, gets in front of everybody, and they look at him because he made an absolute fool of himself. And after firing crew chiefs and after having people not work with him, the current face of Dynaco came up to him and tried to give him some good guidance. And he said, "You've got more talent in one lug nut than a lot of cars have in their entire wheel." And that's all he heard. His head got big, and all he could think of. He said, "But you better learn how to work with others." He didn't hear that. He didn't hear anything else that he had to say. He was like, oh, thank you so much, Mr. McKean. And he missed the guidance that he was being given. Sometimes we just are so stuck in ourselves. We miss the guidance that God is trying to give us. Radiator Springs had a lot to teach but he had to be ready to listen and learn. I want to encourage us to accept guidance, and when God gives it, to be grateful and take it. And so, rather than having an attitude where it's all about you, when somebody is giving you a big break, like Rusty's, his first sponsor ever gave him a big break, and then he didn't want to have anything to do with them, didn't want to be associated with them, didn't want to be touched by them because his focus was wrong. Guidance can result in gratification. We can learn to appreciate what God offers. Bad behavior can be stopped if we would stop being so greedy. Bad behavior can be stopped if we will accept guidance and be filled with gratification. And bad behavior can be stopped because God relays grace. The text says, but he gives more grace. Therefore he says, God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Brothers and sisters, we can all receive the grace of God. Grace is a benefit. It comes from a benefactor. Another way of describing it is favor. This word is actually, the emphasis is on the person who is receiving the gift, even though it requires somebody who can give the gift. In Luke chapter 1, verse 30, the same word is used where Mary found favor with God. And God used her to bring his only begotten son into the world. Luke 2:52, Jesus grew in favor with God and with men. If Jesus can grow in favor with God and men, what would make us think that we don't need to grow and have favor with God and people? Doc Hudson, at one point he was a judge, and he clowned Lightning McQueen and was ready to throw the book at him. But he ended up giving him grace. Lightning McQueen needed that grace, and Doc Hudson ended up giving it. Those of you who are still reading through the Bible, some of you may struggle with the Old Testament. And you may wonder, why is this God giving people such a hard time? But he's trying to teach people how to behave. And it's all pointing towards a New Testament where his son would become the sacrificial lamb, where God gives grace. We can have the right attitude if it's not all about us, if we can accept and be benefactors of his favor and receive grace. It will change our behavior. It will make us act right towards God and towards others. Except that what is undeserved, God still willingly gives. We ought to appreciate it, and we ought to let it change our lives and our life's actions. When Lightning McQueen finally got it, when he finally figured out what it was like to not think all about himself, he ended up passing on some of that grace to somebody who was an incessant pain in the bumper, Mayor. That brother was always all up in Lightning McQueen's gumbo. He was always right there, whether Lightning McQueen wanted him or not. He was always there. Think we ought to go cow tipping. Car tipping. Yeah, He did some hilarious stuff together, even though Lightning McQueen didn't think it was funny, didn't think it was fun, didn't think much of Mater. But when he really got what it meant to not think about himself, when he could get off his own bad behavior and receive the grace that God had for him, he was able to give grace to Mater. And I love that scene near the very end where Mater's in the Dynaco helicopter, absolutely enjoying the time of his life. And Lightning McQueen could enjoy it as well because it didn't cost him anything to be kind to somebody who was so kind to him. It didn't cost him anything to have received grace, and then he could give it to somebody else. Our bad behavior can stop if we can recognize God is the one who's in charge, and it's all about him, not all about us. If we can appreciate the grace he offers and gives. It's the whole reason why Jesus came, why he died, why he gave his life, and why he rose again on the third day. We have the opportunity to receive a grace that's more powerful and is worthy of us giving it away.